There comes a moment in life when the pursuit exhausts us, not because we are weak, but because our soul begins to whisper a deeper truth. You were never meant to chase. In a world addicted to hustle, striving and proving, something miraculous begins when you let go. When you no longer throw your energy outward in desperate pursuit, the world begins to turn toward you. This is not mysticism. It's not laziness disguised as wisdom. It is the quiet power of alignment. And once you tap into it, everything changes. Let's explore the 5 key insights behind this transformation. There is a hidden law operating in the depths of human nature, a quiet force that governs attraction, influence, and the movement of life toward us. It is not loud, it does not scream, and yet it is profoundly powerful. It is the law of inner gravity. Just as the earth pulls objects toward it not by striving, but by simply being what it is, so too does the human soul attract what belongs to it by resting in its own truth. When you are constantly chasing approval, affection, opportunities, you are not moving forward, you are running away from your own center. And the world, sensing that imbalance, retreats from you. The more desperately you grasp, the more elusive everything becomes. Your energy begins to carry the frequency of lack, of unworthiness, of insecurity. And in a universe that echoes what we are, not what we pretend to be, this is precisely what is returned. There's something deeply paradoxical about this. The harder you try to be noticed, the more invisible you become. The louder you shout for recognition, the more you drown out the quiet magnetism of your true self. But when you stop, when you cease the endless pursuit and turn inward, something ancient and powerful awakens. You become like a mountain, not because you are rigid, but because you are rooted. You are not pushing life forward with effort, you are pulling it toward you with presence. We've all met those individuals, the ones who walk into a room and immediately draw attention, not because they demand it, but because they carry a certain stillness. Their presence isn't loud, it's deep. It speaks without words. It says, I know who I am, and I am enough. That is gravity. That is inner weight. Not the weight of ego or self-importance, but the weight of groundedness. It is unmistakable and deeply attractive. There's a story that comes to mind, one that I witnessed firsthand. A client, let's call her Sarah, came to me burnt out and disillusioned. She had spent years trying to prove herself at work, always the first to volunteer, always the last to leave. She'd taken on more than her share, all in the hopes of being noticed, promoted, validated. But nothing changed. She remained in the same position, overlooked again and again. Her efforts, she felt, were swallowed by the noise around her, and worst of all, she was losing herself in the process. When we spoke, I didn't tell her to stop caring or stop trying. I asked her to stop chasing, to return to her center, to do her work with excellence, not from desperation, but from dignity, to no longer seek external confirmation, but to affirm herself from within. Slowly, she began to change. She stopped over-explaining in meetings. She spoke with clarity instead of trying to impress. She said no when something was beyond her role. She let go of the need to be seen. And then the shift happened. Her energy changed. Her presence became calmer, yet more powerful. 2 months later, her boss called her in, not to reprimand or remind her to try harder, but to offer her the very promotion she once begged for. She hadn't asked. She hadn't pleaded. She had simply become someone who no longer chased. And life, recognizing her new frequency, met her there. This story isn't just a lesson about career advancement. It is a symbol, a mirror of what occurs in all areas of life. Relationships, opportunities, even creativity. They are drawn to the one who has learned to sit still in their own essence. Not because they are indifferent, but because they are no longer fragmented. Their energy is not scattered, it is whole. When you live from this inner gravity, you begin to understand that you were never meant to chase what already belongs to you. You only needed to align with it. Like the moon and the tide, what is meant for you moves toward you when your energy is steady. It may not come in the way you expect, or on the timeline your ego demands, but it comes. And it comes not because you pursued it, but because you prepared for it. Because you became the person capable of receiving it. To walk in this way requires courage. It requires silence, reflection, the willingness to let go of the masks you've worn to gain approval. But on the other side of that surrender is power. Not forceful power, but magnetic power. The kind that doesn't shout, but still shakes the world. This is the law of inner gravity. It cannot be faked. It cannot be bought. It arises only when you stop running and come home to yourself. Before a word is spoken, before a smile is exchanged or a gesture is made, something deeper has already spoken on your behalf. You carry with you a field, an atmosphere, a vibration that introduces you before your name ever does. And though it is invisible, it is unmistakably real. People feel you long before they understand you. This is why, so often, conversations fail not because of what is said, but because of the silent language behind the words. Energy speaks louder than language ever could. You've felt it yourself, walking into a room and suddenly sensing tension, or meeting someone and instantly feeling drawn to them without knowing why. These are not coincidences. They are evidence of a deeper communication, one rooted in what we carry within. Words may be crafted and calculated, but energy cannot lie. It reveals the truth of who we are, and the world, in turn, responds not to our performance, but to our presence. When your energy says, "I am anxious, I am unsure, I don't believe in myself," that message leaks into everything you do. You may say all the right things, but the world hears your fear. Opportunities drift past you, relationships strain, and efforts seem to go unnoticed, not because you are unworthy, but because your vibration is misaligned. The echo you receive is the echo of what you emit. Life mirrors the tone of your internal dialogue, not the script you present to others. And yet, something incredible happens when that energy changes. When you begin to embody the belief, "I am enough," the world shifts. Not because you suddenly become more skilled or more perfect, but because you become more true. There is a quiet confidence that radiates from those who trust themselves. They do not need to prove because they know. They do not dominate a conversation because their silence is full. Their posture speaks of rootedness. Their eyes no longer seek approval. They reflect clarity. This change in energy is not magical. It is biological, emotional, psychological. Studies in social psychology show that the majority of communication is non-verbal. Your tone, your pace, your posture, these shape how you are perceived far more than the words you choose. When someone walks into a room with grounded energy, people notice. They listen, not because of what is said, but because of the resonance that follows them like a wave. I remember a man I once worked with who could never seem to connect with people. Despite being brilliant, kind, and articulate, he always felt overlooked. In meetings he would share good ideas, but they would fall flat. He assumed he needed to speak louder or craft better arguments. But it wasn't about his volume, it was his energy. He came from a place of inner doubt, carrying a quiet plea to be accepted. His words reached others, but his energy created resistance. After working together, something in him softened. He stopped trying to impress. He began grounding himself before speaking, taking moments of silence, reconnecting with his breath. He would enter the room with a sense of enoughness, even before he spoke. Within weeks, he noticed a change. People began to lean in. His ideas were met with curiosity, not because they had changed, but because he had. His energy said, "I trust myself." And the world finally heard him. When you shift the message your energy sends, you shift the experience you create. This doesn't mean pretending to be confident. It means returning to the truth of who you are beneath the masks. It means speaking to yourself in a different tone, one of compassion, belief, and courage, until your entire being begins to echo that tone outwards. Children sense this instinctively. Animals too. A dog will react not to your words, but to your mood. A child will respond to your emotional state more than your instructions. The world, it seems, is far more intuitive than we realize. And once we understand this, we can stop exhausting ourselves by over-explaining, overdoing, and overreaching, and begin aligning instead. When you walk into life with energy that says, "I belong here," life makes space for you. When you embody the frequency of trust, you find that doors open, not because you demanded entry, but because your presence quietly knocked. There is great freedom in knowing that you do not have to chase love, success, or connection. You only have to become the one who receives it. In the end, it is not your effort that shapes your life. It is your energy. It is not your voice that convinces others. It is the vibration beneath your silence. Speak that truth, and watch what begins to echo back. There is a quiet strength that arises when one no longer clings to outcomes, when the grasping hands of expectation fall open and one learns to simply allow. In that space, what once felt distant often begins to return, not out of obligation, but because it is drawn to authenticity. This is the essence of detachment, not a cold indifference, not the absence of emotion or care, but a deeper form of presence rooted in freedom. To detach is to release the illusion that control equals power. It is to understand that true power lies not in forcing, but in flowing. We are taught to strive, to hold tight, to prove ourselves through effort and persistence. And while commitment has its place, clinging does not. Clinging arises from fear, fear of being alone, of being unseen, of being unworthy. And fear, even when masked as love or ambition, only creates more distance. When you chase something or someone with the energy of desperation, you are really saying, "Without this, I am not enough." And everything in the universe recognizes that lack. It recoils, not as punishment, but as reflection. Think of how people behave in relationships. The more one partner pushes, calls, pleads, or overextends, the more the other tends to pull away. The dance becomes strained, and tension replaces connection. It's not because the love is gone, but because the energy has shifted. What was once mutual becomes unbalanced. But the moment the desperate energy subsides, when one stops clinging and returns to self-respect, a strange and beautiful thing often happens. The other feels it. Something rebalances, and without force, there is reconnection. This is not a tactic or manipulation. It is a return to wholeness. When you detach, you are saying to the world, "I want this, but I don't need it to define me." That kind of energy is magnetic. It communicates confidence, stability, and self-trust. And people, whether in love, business, or friendship, are naturally drawn to that. They feel safe in the presence of someone who does not demand or expect them to complete something within themselves. They are more willing to stay because they are free to leave. This principle extends far beyond relationships. In your work, your goals, your dreams, it is the same. When you attach your identity to a particular result, you become imprisoned by your own expectations. Every obstacle becomes a threat to your self-worth. Every delay feels personal. But when you detach, when you give your best and release the rest, life becomes lighter, more fluid, more alive. You act not from fear, but from inspiration. You create not to earn value, but to express it. There is a story of a woman who longed for a certain job. She spent months applying, preparing, trying to say all the right things. Each time she left the interview feeling drained, disappointed. She was clinging, not to the job itself, but to what she believed it would mean about her. One day, tired of the cycle, she decided to stop trying to prove anything. She applied to one last position, this time speaking honestly, calmly, from a place of inner alignment. She didn't rehearse her value, she embodied it, and this time the call came. The offer arrived, not because she forced it, but because she finally let go. Letting go is not about doing nothing, it's about doing your part fully and then stepping back. It's about recognizing that the soil doesn't force the seed to grow, it nurtures it, waters it, and allows the sun to do the rest. Life, in its deepest wisdom, responds to space. It moves more easily where it is not constrained. When you release your grip, you make room for something greater than your fear to enter. Before you speak, act, or make a decision, pause and ask yourself, am I acting from need or from truth? That one question can reshape your entire direction. Acting from need contracts your world. It breeds anxiety, pressure, and disappointment. Acting from truth expands it. It invites ease, clarity, and unexpected beauty. One path is fueled by the fear of what will happen if you don't get what you want. The other is guided by the quiet knowing that you are already whole. To detach is not to care less. It is to care in a way that honors yourself first. It is to love without possession, to strive without fear, and to trust that what belongs to you will find you, not through force, but through the grace of alignment. The world does not need more effort, it needs more integrity. And integrity comes when you act not from desperation, but from devotion to what is real within you. That is the power of detachment. And that is where everything begins to move. In a world obsessed with speed, urgency, and the relentless pursuit of more, stillness is often misunderstood. It is mistaken for laziness, for passivity, for weakness. But true stillness is none of those things. It is not the absence of movement, but the presence of depth. It is the moment when the inner noise quiets and a deeper voice begins to speak, a voice that was always there, patiently waiting to be heard. When we are constantly in motion, chasing, striving, reacting, our minds become chaotic. The noise drowns out intuition, our thoughts blur into one another, and the space where insight could emerge is crowded by pressure and urgency. Most of what we call thinking in such states is not true thought. It is looping, restless anxiety masquerading as productivity. We mistake busyness for progress. We confuse movement with momentum. But running in circles does not lead to truth. It only deepens confusion. There is a subtle form of self-avoidance in constant activity. We often chase not because we know where we're going, but because sitting still would mean facing the discomfort we carry inside. Silence reveals the parts of ourselves we try to outrun. But if we are courageous enough to stop, to sit, to simply be, we begin to notice something unexpected. Beneath the panic, beneath the noise, beneath the conditioning, there is clarity. A knowing that doesn't shout, but speaks in calm precision. It arrives not through force, but through surrender. A young entrepreneur once told me how he would spiral into anxiety every time his startup encountered a challenge. He would scramble to fix things, change marketing strategies, call emergency meetings, make impulsive decisions. But none of it worked. The more he reacted, the more tangled the situation became. Eventually, overwhelmed and burned out, he stepped away. He turned off his phone, disconnected from the noise, and took a hike into the mountains. Alone, in silence, far from the chaos, something within him shifted. He wasn't trying to solve anything. He wasn't asking for answers. And that's when it came. An idea, clear and simple, like a whisper from the core of his being. A new model for his business emerged, not from effort, but from space. That insight became the turning point. His company began to grow again, not because he forced it, but because he had made space for the right path to reveal itself. Stillness is not idleness. It is active receptivity. It is the fertile ground in which wisdom can take root. You do not plant seeds and then shout at them to grow. You water them, you wait, you trust the process. The same is true for your life, your decisions, your direction. The answers you seek will not arrive through panic. They emerge in quiet moments, in long walks, in deep breaths, in letting go of the need to know everything right now. When you embrace stillness, the right people begin to show up, not because you chase them, but because your energy becomes clear. You stop sending out static. You become aligned, and alignment is magnetic. Clarity attracts clarity. Peace draws in peace. Life flows to those who no longer block it with noise. But to sit in stillness requires courage. It means detaching from the illusion that you must always be doing something to be valuable. It means trusting that life is not solely built by what you do, but also by what you allow. The greatest truths often do not come from thinking harder. They arrive when thinking stops and presence begins. Stillness is an invitation. It invites us to listen, not to the world, but to the voice inside us that never rushes, never shouts, and never lies. This voice knows who you are. It knows what you need, but it will not compete with the chaos. It waits quietly for your return. So pause, even for a few moments each day. Let the world keep spinning while you sit still. Let your mind settle like stirred water, returning to clarity. The insights you seek are not far. They are just beneath the surface, waiting to be seen. All they ask is that you slow down long enough to notice. There is a quiet but profound truth that shapes the course of our lives. We do not attract what we want, we attract who we are. Beneath every desperate pursuit, behind every goal we chase with trembling hands, lies a hidden belief that we are not yet enough. That we must become someone else before we can be worthy of the things we desire. But this illusion is what keeps the very things we seek at a distance. The deeper reality is that identity creates reality. You do not become something by chasing it. You become it by embodying it now, in this moment, fully and without apology. The problem with striving from lack is that it reinforces the belief that fulfillment exists somewhere else, in some distant future. When you live in a state of not yet worthy, not yet successful, not yet lovable, you anchor yourself in a perpetual becoming that never ends. You walk toward your dreams with the energy of absence rather than presence, and that energy colors everything. The world doesn't respond to your wishes. It responds to the frequency of your being. And if your being says, "I am lacking," then lack is what life echoes back. The transformation begins not in action, but in identity. The moment you stop seeing yourself as someone who is on the way to being something and instead start embodying the truth that you already are that something, the world shifts. It is not arrogance to believe in your own wholeness, it is responsibility. If you want to be a leader, lead. If you want to be loved, love yourself first, as if you are already held. If you want to be creative, speak and act as the artist who already trusts their voice. Life organizes itself around those who know who they are, not around those who are constantly trying to prove it. There is a psychological and biological basis for this truth. Neuroscience has revealed that the brain does not distinguish between imagination and reality. When you visualize yourself succeeding, when you rehearse confidence, when you embody the version of yourself who already lives your truth, your brain activates the same neural circuits that would fire if you were actually living it. You are literally training your nervous system to become that identity, not as fantasy, but as alignment. This is not wishful thinking. It is not delusion. It is a deliberate reshaping of your internal reality so that your external world begins to match. I once knew a man who dreamed of becoming a public speaker, yet lived as though his voice didn't matter. He spoke softly, avoided attention, and introduced himself as someone still working on his confidence. No matter how many courses he took or how much content he consumed, his external reality never changed because his identity never changed. One day, exhausted from trying, he decided to stop waiting. He began to carry himself differently. He spoke up even when his hands trembled. He told people he was a speaker, not that he wanted to be one. Within a few months, invitations appeared, not because the world suddenly believed in him, but because he did. His energy shifted, and reality followed. This shift is available to anyone. It doesn't require perfect circumstances, just a willingness to live the truth of who you want to be as if it were already real. Every time you act in accordance with that identity, you are casting a vote for the future you want. Every decision, every small step is an affirmation. This is who I am. And slowly, that identity becomes more natural, more embodied. It stops feeling like pretending and starts feeling like remembering. The external world is often slow to catch up, but it does catch up. And when it does, it doesn't feel like a miracle. It feels like something you always knew, something you've been aligned with for a long time. That's the power of identity. It is the blueprint from which life is built. Everything else, your actions, your results, your relationships, flows from that foundation. So if your reality feels out of sync with your desires, don't work harder. Go deeper. Ask yourself who you are being in the moments between effort, and then become the version of yourself that no longer waits. Walk into your life as though it already belongs to you, because it does. When you lead with identity, reality has no choice but to follow. So, when your energy no longer chases, everything starts to chase you. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. You've come home to yourself. You've stopped leaking your power, and in doing so, you've become the very thing others seek. Let go of the chase. The mountain does not run after the sky, and yet the sky never leaves it. Be the mountain,